Hi, I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we all go through so many transitions in our life. I'd like to give the example of triathlons, something I do. And with the triathlon, the first thing you do is you swim. And then you get out of that water and get in the transition area, and then you go ahead and bike. And then you finish that, and then you do something totally different and you run. And that is a metaphor for our lives. We start from one thing to another, and voila, our life is totally different than what we thought what it would be. So I have a wonderful guest today, David McHenry. David McHenry wanted to be a rock star. And then he almost was a rock star, and then became a music person, and then did stand-up comedy, and then became an IT person, and it's just fascinating. So I want to welcome David McHenry.
Thank you very much, Becky. It's good to be here.
I find he did a video, a bio for us, and I find everything that you talked about very interesting. So I'd like to kind of start from the beginning.
Okay.
And the beginning is you were raised in Nashville, right?
That's correct. Native-born Nashville.
That's right. And you're one of 4 kids.
Yes.
And even though you became a musician, you're the only one who did not take music lessons.
Correct. My parents made all of my brother and sisters take music lessons of some sort, whether it be guitar, violin, piano. I was the only one that they just said they just didn't worry about it. And then I'm the one who ends up falling in love with music and pursuing it.
Wow. So what was your first inkling that music might be there back in your childhood?
Well, honestly, while I always loved listening to music, I think the first time I really thought about performing music was when I was in junior high. And I was talking to a friend about a song, and I sang him the song. And he said, "You have a good voice. Have you thought about being in a band?" And I was like, "No." And so he said, "Well, let's start a band." And we did.
Wow. So just from you actually singing and somebody complimenting you, and it's like, wow, I could do this.
I had never thought of it before that, honestly.
Wow.
I didn't think, in fact, somebody had asked me, could you ever play drums before that? And I said, they were saying, can you pat your head and rub your belly? And I tried and couldn't, and I said, oh, well, then I could never play drums. And then just about 2 or 3 years later, I was playing drums. So there you go.
So the drums were your main instrument?
They were my primary instrument, and then I started playing piano. And I learned piano to be able to write songs. And I spent, I had a music instructor who came to teach me piano, and he was trying to teach me my scales and all the things you're supposed to learn when you learn an instrument. And I didn't have the self-discipline to practice like I should. But every time I sat down on the piano, I came up with a new melody or a song idea. So every time he came over to teach me piano, he'd say, okay, have you done your scales? And I'm like, no, not really. But hey, I got this new song. And finally, one day, he said, you know, this isn't working. Let's try this. Instead of me teaching you how to play your scales, why don't you show me your songs, and I'll help you write the songs or learn how to write songs. And that's basically how I became a songwriter.
Wow. And that was in high school?
Yes, I was about 16 years old.
16-year-old, and these creative things were bubbling up in your mind, and you were... Yeah, and then didn't you say that you went to college at Belmont University?
Yes, I went to, well, it was Belmont College at the time.
Okay.
And I studied, so I went in as a vocal major and studied voice. And then after 2 years, I think, I became a music business major. And then I ended up getting a degree in psychology.
In psychology, because there was less courses to take or something?
Right. I had hit a point where I had taken all the classes I liked, and I was starting to take these just business administration and these just, classes that just didn't interest me at all. And my advisor said, in the music business, nobody cares what your degree is in. He said, so, I was just looking at this, and I think you could actually graduate sooner if you switch majors to psychology. And I had taken a class in psychology and excelled in it. And he said, you enjoyed it, right? And I said, well, yeah, actually, I kind of did. So I switched majors and graduated a semester sooner.
There you go. Wow. And then when I had talked to you earlier, your goal after college was, I want to be a rock star, right?
That is correct, yes.
Yes. I love it. And your goal to be the rock star, well, what was your path?
So I I built up a little recording studio and recorded just constantly. It was just, I bought myself keyboards and drums, and well, I had the drums, of course, but I bought myself keyboards and a reel-to-reel, and I basically just kept recording and writing music. And then I put together a live band to play out, and we played a mixture of cover songs and our own music. Also, I tried to send demos to different companies and that sort of thing. So, I mean, a lot of the standard things you do when you're trying to make it. And then I also, as you had mentioned, I took classes in stand-up comedy and classes in improv comedy because I also have a love for comedy.
And how did that work out? Comedy is it's not like the rock star thing. It's
Right.
Comedy is a whole other thing.
Yeah, I decided that I didn't want to pursue stand-up comedy after all. When I did the improv comedy, like, have you ever seen the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's a show that was actually very much what we did. And so I was with a group of people, and they would have games, and then you would improv the scene and come up with whatever you could to be funny. And I found that I was okay at it, but not great.
Okay.
So I said, okay, all right, maybe this isn't for me. I like it, but I'm probably not meant to be the funny guy. So I just focused on music. And then that's when I fell into children's music, which was something unique, never thought I would do, but turned out to sort of be a niche that fit me perfectly.
I think it's a fascinating story. We have a mutual friend, Mark Horowitz, and you were so many musicians. You have a job to pay the bills so you can do music, and I think you had one of those jobs, right?
Yes.
And so Mark Horowitz comes up to you, he doesn't even know you, and what did he do?
So Mark, I'm actually in the break room.
For some
for
kind
this
of
company, it was a telemarketing company.
Don't we?
We all
You
love
were one of
telemarketing.
those.
I was one of those. I was one of those poor people that you hang up on when they
Oh,
call.
no.
And I didn't blame them either. I never got upset because I knew I would do the same thing. But Mark came up to me. I didn't know him at the time, and he says, "Excuse me, this is going to seem odd, but do you play drums by any chance?"
How did he know?
And I was like, "Yes, I do." And he goes, "Oh, this is great. This is great. Do you play electronic drums?" And I was like, "Yes, actually, I do." He goes, "Oh, this is great." And then he's like, "Do you sing?" I went, "Yes, I do." And he's like, "Oh, this is great. I have this band, and we tour, and we need electronic drums because they need to be portable." And he just gave me the whole spiel, and it was such an odd spiel because it was basically like a children's show, but it was a rock band, right? So I was like, that's intriguing. And I have always had a sort of a Pied Piper-like personality with children. Ever since I was a kid, I just always attracted younger children. They always, I think mainly because I was nice to them and treated them with respect. Because of that, and I just found that they were a good audience. They actually found me funny. So because of that, this was a great blend of rock and roll music, children's entertainment, entertaining children, and theater. So I gravitated towards it. So when I saw their show, I said, "Ooh, I like this. I'd like to do this." And I ended up touring with them for Jim and the Animal Band for 2 to 3 years.
And it was a rock and roll band for children.
Right. It was a rock and roll band that then the music was geared towards children and families.
Okay.
Right. Mark was the music director and keyboardist, and like I said, I played drums and backup. And then that led me to doing my own show because I found that because after the shows we would meet and greet the children, and I just loved bantering with the kids, just cutting up with them and having fun and making jokes and everything while I'm signing autographs. And
Wow.
the other bandmates were all like, "Have you thought about doing your own show?" And I said, at the time, it seemed intimidating. And then I ended up meeting a chance encounter in a grocery store. I was wearing a Jim and the Animal Band tour jacket. And Patty Way, who was a songwriter who had written some Disney, for some Disney projects. And she approached me and said she had an idea for a kid's show. And I gave her a tape of my voice, and she called me up and said, "I really like your voice. Can we do this?" And so we ended up recording our first album. And then
another chance encounter.
My life is full of chance encounters. Seriously,
Yes.
I have had in both my music and IT career, I've had chance encounters.
And your wife.
And my wife, yes.
Yes.
Meeting my wife was very much a chance encounter. It's not often you meet somebody and speak in a Scottish brogue. My wife and I joke around. We play along with accents, and so we met in a store. The salesman asked me a question because I was a fellow salesman, and then I spoke to him in a Scottish brogue, and she replied in kind, and the rest is history. We've been married 22 years, and we together 24 years. So
That's
all
fabulous.
off of a chance encounter.
I believe in the law of attraction, and you attract like energy, and obviously you have in your whole life. It's really been working for you.
It's been working really well for me, yes. I've had a lot of things just fall into place, just almost uncannily, transitions that happened, there's that word, transitions that have happened due to, again, some kind of coincidence or chance encounter, and then all of a sudden everything just falls into place perfectly. And I've been very lucky that way, and I've been very happy with that. And grateful.
So the big transition that I hear this happy bachelor single rock and roll music, and then love comes into your life, and then you go, wow, maybe I should get a real day job, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
Tell us about how that happened.
Sure. So when I met my wife, I, at that point, and my stepdaughter, she had a 7-year-old daughter at the time, and so I had a ready-made family, basically. And at that point, I started looking around and realizing that maybe the music industry wasn't stable enough for me to raise a family. So with my own show, which is called Cat McCool and Company, which was basically based on, the character was an Australian cat, so I got to do an Australian accent doing that show. We had basically booked a year in advance, as you do, and we had been touring through William Morris Agency, and we booked a show, or we had booked a tour, for that summer that then fell through due to just circumstances. I think the place where we were going to play lost their funding, something out of control, and I had to tell the band I didn't have work for them. And our last show was at the Ryman Auditorium.
At the Ryman, you were on the magic stage of the Ryman.
The magic stage, and that was my last show as Cat McCool, along with Faith Hill, Winona, Rodney Crowell, Tim
Big
McGraw.
names.
It was a wild experience. Just a lot of big name folks, and we were all sharing. We all got the equal amount, 15 minutes each to perform. It was for a benefit, and I don't remember what the benefit was for. To be honest, that was back in 1997, 98, I think. But I thought, okay, this is a good way to let's end on a high note. And I was working with computers for my music, so I had learned over time how to repair my own computer, things like that. So next thing I know, when I meet my wife, I think, maybe it's time to. And it was right with Y2K, if you remember the Y2K scare. So companies were hiring up people for computers, and they didn't need a lot of experience. So I ended up getting a job in computers right around that time. And a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, trained me. He used to come over to my house a couple of nights a week and teach me I basically got a Microsoft certification. and he would come in, and he brought some old computers from his office, and we would build networks and install operating system on the computer and all these things you do in that kind of work. And it was, and I found I liked it. It was actually something I liked almost as much as music at that time. And so it was not as hard a transition as I thought it would be. And then I went to my first job in that, and what I found with that career path was every few months I got a raise and a promotion. I was on a rocket ride, is what we were calling it. It was just a timing thing. Again, it goes back to that chance encounters type thing, right? I walked into this place and I'd gotten my certification. So then they said, after a few months, they said, you're really good at this. I tell you what, we're going to put you in charge of this group of people. And then the next thing I know okay, hey, we're going to now have you do this. And then I start looking for a new job, and I get one like that, making this much more. And then Amelia was pregnant with my second daughter. And at that point, I was like, okay, I've got to make X number of dollars in order, because she wanted to stay home for the first 2 years of Ray's life, and which I thought was a great idea. And so, but then that means I had to double my income. And I was a little nervous about it. And then my sister was at a Christmas party, and with an old friend of hers who was a Cat McCool fan and whose kids were fans of my show. So he already knew me. And she was talking to him at the Christmas party, and Rachel was born in March, by the way. So this is how close we are to the wire. We're like in the last 3 months, 3.5 months of the pregnancy, right? And I'm like, okay, I really need to get a job making X number of dollars. And she meets him my sister meets him at the party, or not meets him, but they're old friends. They'd known each other for years. But she talks to him at the party, and he says, I'm looking for somebody who's Microsoft certified, and I really need them to come in and just rebuild my network from scratch and just get everything, and I want them to just take over. And she said, call my brother. And so she calls me from the party, David, I want you to call this, his name is, And so I give him a call. We set up an interview. I walk in. He goes, he said, I have you at a disadvantage. I recognize you from your video. So, we interview very well, and he offers me the job in the interview, making exactly $1,000 more than what I needed to make.
Well, you put that goal out to the universe, and the universe said yes.
Yes, it did.
Yes.
It did indeed. And
yes.
I then worked for him. He was a wonderful boss, and we still keep in touch. Except because of COVID, he has a Halloween party every year that's a lot of fun, and we always go to his party. And we didn't get to have it last year or this year because of COVID, but hopefully he'll start those back up soon. But yeah, he was a wonderful man to work for, and then I basically built the network from scratch and did all that, set up everything from the ground up, which was, I found, it's interesting, I found the same charge from that as I did writing songs. There's a creativity to it. And I found that building a network or building a department, because I've since then moved on to more people management than network management. And I found that taking something or building something from nothing is the way I put it. That's how I think about writing a song, right? There's nothing, and then
out of the ether.
Out of the ether, you have this idea. Well, it's the same thing when you're building a team of people. You need a team of people to manage these computers, or to run a help desk to help people with their problems. You then have to find these people, and you have to put the right people together with the right personality types. And I found, and this may be the psychology coming back, but I found that I have a knack for that. And so not only did I get to, and that's part of why the rocket ride, I guess, kept on going, because then I went from being a technical person to being a management person, and then ultimately to become a security person. Okay.
Well, that's where I want to go next. Your current job, which is really dealing with medical things. But explain that, because I think that's so important when people don't realize that you don't have to pay something to get your appendix out, and one entity will make it cheaper and one's more expensive. I didn't know. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So about 7.5 years ago, I had the good fortune of being hired by my current employer, Healthcare Blue Book. Healthcare Blue Book is like Kelly Blue Book in that it is, and the original vision of the company was to help people find affordable healthcare options. And so, for instance, well, how the company was founded, this is a great example. The CEO, before he ever founded the company, his son needed foot surgery. So he set it up with a doctor, and then they scheduled it at a hospital. And then he called the hospital and says, hey, I have a high deductible, so I'd like to know what this is going to cost me. Well, the first thing that happened was the hospital didn't want to tell him, because that's very normal. Hospitals don't want to tell you what things cost. That is changing now with new legislation. But anyway, he kept forcing the issue, and finally they called him a couple weeks later and said, okay, normally it's $37,000, but for you, because you're a doctor, we'll have a professional courtesy price of $25,000. To which he said, yeah, wait on that. That seems a bit high. So he calls the doctor back, and the doctor says, well, gosh, I didn't know that. Well, you know, there's a clinic right down the street that has all the equipment I need. Why don't you call them? So he called the clinic, and he asked them how much it would cost him. Without skipping a beat, they said $1,500.
Whoa, what a difference.
Right, a huge difference. And he said, wow, I'm a doctor and I didn't know this. So then he had the idea to create Healthcare Blue Book. And I joined the company when there was about 22 employees. And now we're at almost 200. And we've grown into not just pricing information, but doctor quality information. We also will tell you if a doctor has a tendency to send you to expensive places or less expensive places.
Wow, you track that even.
Right. So, for instance, you can have a doctor who has wonderful quality, but they always send you to the hospital to get an x-ray, so you pay 5 times what it really costs. That sort of thing.
And so who is that available for?
Right. So mostly our paying customers that get the full product are companies that are self-insured, typically. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's like our base clientele. So, for instance, we have clients like EA Games, FedEx, and other companies, really big companies. I think Disney is about to be one of our companies. I probably shouldn't, I don't know if I've been at liberty to say that yet, but I think I am. But big name companies, and then they're self-insured, what that means is they can't, and it's so expensive to pay insurance on 1,000 employees or 500,000 employees or however many they have, that they actually just pay the claims. So, when you work for a company like that and you get a CT scan, they're just paying directly. The reason you get an insurance card is that the insurance company is adjudicating the claim. So they're just not paying it. And they get paid a percentage of what the claim costs, which then means the insurance company is incentivized for it to cost more. Got it. So the health insurance company wants you to get that $25,000 surgery instead of the $1,500 surgery. So we're there to help patients make that informed decision, and that helps. And then so the companies buy our product. They pay per life, as we call it, but basically per employee. Not really very expensive. It's actually relatively very inexpensive. And then we help them track and show them how they've saved money. Because, hey, this person, they went and got the $1,500 surgery, not the $25,000 surgery. And that, saves them a ton of money. And then sometimes they'll do things like rewards, where we send out a reward check to the patient for choosing
That's a
green
nice
provider,
incentive.
as we call it. So they may get a $50 check or a $100 check or whatever the reward is, but they save the company thousands of dollars. So it's a win-win all the way around.
What a wonderful concept that is.
Oh, it is, and it's also a wonderful place to work from a cultural standpoint.
Because you don't have to come in a coat and tie.
Exactly. I'm way overdressed for work. I'll put it that way.
Now?
Yes, now. As I jokingly say, our dress code is just be dressed. They draw the line, no nudity. But yeah, I mean, people wear shorts, sandals, even. I mean, and I'm talking the leadership team sometimes comes in t-shirts and shorts. And it's just a very relaxed atmosphere. They're very good about avoiding politics. They're very transparent with the clients. All the leadership team is very accessible, which is rare in a lot of corporate environments, though I think it's becoming less so. And so it's not only a great mission that I'm supporting, but it's also a great workplace. And it's there that I transitioned to security. Because when I started there, I was their director of infrastructure, which means I was in charge of all the networks and all of the switches and routers and computers and servers and all that. And then security has always been a focus of mine. And so when he hired me, since I also had a certification for security, I also helped set up the security department as well. And then as the company grew, I grew with it, so to speak. So I created all the procedures and policies we have in place, such as we do what's called a risk assessment, which is where you basically list out all the risks in a company, and then you assess what that will cost the company if that happens, and that sort of thing. And then you address how you handle them. So and because of that, then a couple of years ago, I transitioned to just Director of Information Security and got to hand off all of the network things to someone else because my interest level was waning in that
You
area.
needed more challenges.
I found myself just kind of bored with networks and not excited to buy them anymore, but security was a little bit more exciting. And I get to do fun things like hire people to try to break into our network.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
So just try it. See if you can break into our network.
And then tell me how you did it so I can make sure not
Wow, hire a hacker.
It's
that
what
could
you
be...
do, actually. It's known as a penetration test.
Well, how about that?
And it's a lot of fun.
And you find that fun. And we only have about a minute more. So how would you, what an interesting talk about transitions. I mean, you're on stage and now you're doing cybersecurity. I mean, is there what next?
Actually, I'm enjoying now being able to perform music on the side. And I put out albums now as a hobby, not as an avocation, not a vocation.
Right.
And it is so much more fulfilling to do it that way because I'm not worried about making money. I'm not worried about being beholden to a record company. I can put whatever I want on a record. And so I think I'm just going to continue to work in cybersecurity and to record and write music. And then who knows what chance encounter will lead me somewhere next.
There's always a chance encounter for you. It's an amazing, like, I wasn't thinking of that, and now look what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
But I think you have incorporated the best of all worlds, the creativity in music and cybersecurity and everything. So David McHenry, thank you for being a most interesting guest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. All right.
Thank you. I hope that was okay.
That was wonderful.
Great.
Bravo.
Awesome. I tend to be a bit